right, class, put away your ELA notebooks and take out your math notebooks. We're going to switch gears and start our math lesson today. Give students a minute to transition from ELA to math. Now we're going to do my favorite thing, which is activate your prior knowledge. So I want you to think back to when we learned about fractions a couple of weeks ago. And remember, when we activate prior knowledge, this is super important because the knowledge that we already have in our brains, we want to pull out because that information is going to be important for us to do well in today's lesson. So, if I have 1/3 of a pizza pie, what does that mean? Do I have the whole pizza pie? No, I don't. I only have 1/3 of the pizza pie, not the whole thing. So oftentimes when we have a fraction, we don't have a whole. Unless our fraction is written like this, which would equal a whole, then I would have all of the pizza. Now let's review the parts of a fraction. What is this top number here, this 1? What is it called? Yes, the numerator, excellent. And the numerator tells us how many pieces we have. What about this bottom number? What's that called? The denominator, perfect. And the denominator represents how many pieces we have in all. So with the pizza pie, I have 1 piece out of the 3 pieces that are in the pizza pie. And as we learned in our last lesson, fractions and percents are related, as well as decimals. Today we're going to focus mainly on percents. So as a quick review again, what is 100%? Yes, all of it. What about 75%? Yep. 3/4, 50%? Yep. A half, and 25%. 1/4, perfect. Now we're going to do some visualizing. So I want everyone to close their eyes and imagine that you're in a sneaker store and they're having this blowout sale. Everything is 5% off. You find this great pair of sneakers that you want and they're $300. So I'll get my 5% off of that $300. So I have to make sure that I'm not going to look silly in front of the cashier, and I hope I brought enough money with me. So I have to calculate what is this percentage. So I reach into my pocket to pull out my phone, and unfortunately my battery's dead, so I can't use the calculator. Open your eyes. That is why this lesson is so important. Today we're going to learn how to use our mental math skills to figure out percentages of numbers that are multiples of 50. So where else have you seen examples of a percent of a whole? At this time, students would give examples of where they've seen percent of a whole. Some appropriate examples could include a percent tax, or maybe a percentage of students out of the whole class or out of the whole school. All right, so at this time, everyone please go to your manipulatives. And your chart here. With our hundreds. You can also take out 3 of your hundreds blocks to follow along. Before we do any calculations, let's talk about the word percent. We're going to use some context clues to figure out what this word means. And this word percent is so important because hidden in the word is actually the method for how we're going to calculate the percents today. So this first part, per, means for each. So for example, if I earn $8 per hour, that means for each hour that I work, I will receive $8 in pay. The next part of the word is cent. which means 100. And please don't confuse this with coins like pennies, nickels, and dimes, not those types of cents. This cent is like the cent in the word century, which means 100 years. So when we put it all together, we see that percent means for each 100. Now we're going to tackle that problem, that 5% of 300 that we were doing from the shoe store. So, according to our definition of percent, 5% means I need to take 5 for each 100. How many hundreds are in 300? Yes, 3. So, I need to take 5 3 times for each of those hundreds. And I'm going to shade them in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the first 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the second 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the third 100. So I'm going to now do 5 plus 5 plus 5. I can also write this as 5 times 3 for each 100. So I'm taking 5 3 times. You can also write it as repeated addition, thinking back to one of our first lessons this year when we talked about that. No matter how I write it, my answer is still 15. Any questions so far? All right, great. So at this time, we would do a student think aloud portion where a student would come up to the board and explain how he or she would solve this next question, 12% of 200. An appropriate explanation would include saying that 12% means for each 100 I need to take a 12. There are 2 hundreds in the number 200, so I need to do 12 2 times. So I can write it as multiplication, or I can write it as addition. And that equals 24. And of course, as the teacher, I would interject if the student had any trouble in explaining their thought process. Now we're going to check for understanding with some questions. Please complete these independently. And we will go over them as a class. So I give the students about a minute or two to complete these questions, and we would go over them together. So 60% means that I need to take 60 for each 100. I have 100 in the number 100, so I need to do 60 one time, which is 60. The next question, 14% of 600. I have 6 hundreds in the number 600. I need to do 14 6 times for each 100. 14 times 6, or I can do 14 plus 14 plus 14 plus 14. And that equals 84. And for the last one, 8% of 400, I have to take 8 for each 100. I have 4 hundreds in the number 400. So I can do 8 times 4, or 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, and that equals 32. Any questions up to this point? All right, now we're going to expand this a little bit. What if I asked you to solve 6% of 250? How many hundreds do I have in 250? Yes, I have 2 whole hundreds in 250. Now, how should I work with that 50? Because I can't just ignore it. I have to make sure that I include it. What we know about the relationship between 50 and 100? 50 is half of 100. Excellent. So I have 2 whole hundreds and 1 half of 100. So I need to take my 6 2 times for the 2 whole hundreds. Remember, 6 for each 100. So I'll do 6 times 2, which is 12. And to account for the half of 100, I need to take half of 6. I don't have the whole 100, so I can't take the whole 6. So I need to take half. Half of 6 is 3. Add up these 2 pieces, and I learned that 6% of 250 is 15. Now let's try a word problem. A ticket to a baseball game is $50. And the sales tax on that ticket is 8%. How much sales tax will be added to that ticket? So do I have any whole hundreds here? No, I don't. But I have half of 100. So I have 1 half which means I have to take 8 and cut it in half. Half of 8 is 4. So $4 of sales tax will be added to that $50. Any questions? All right, let's check for your understanding one more time. I would like for you to please complete these 2 problems independently, and we will go over them together. So at this time, I would give about a minute for the class to complete the questions, and we would go over them together as a class, but I'll complete them now for sake of time. So I have 1 whole hundred and 1 half of 100 in 150. So I need to do 12 one time for that 1 whole hundred, which is 12. Then I need to do half of 12 to account for the 50. Half of 12 is 6. Add those 2 pieces together, and I learned that 12% of 150 is 18. The next one, we'll do the same methodology. I have 3 whole hundreds in 300. So I do 10 times 3, which is 30. I have 1 half of 100, so I need to do half of 10, which is 5. Add the 2 pieces, and I get 35. All right, so that concludes our lesson, but just to quickly sum up, today we learned how to easily calculate percents of numbers that are multiples of 50. So if you ever see a number like 200 or 350, you can use your mental math skills to find the percentage of that number. So your homework tonight, you're going to have a worksheet where you can practice more of these concepts. It includes some straightforward problems and some word problems for you to complete, and we'll go over that tomorrow. Also tomorrow, we're going to take this one step further and learn how to calculate percents when the numbers are not multiples of 50, so when the numbers are more complex. That is called direct percents. And before you leave, please make sure you complete the exit ticket that your table monitors have put on your table for you. You can leave it on my desk on your way out. And thanks for listening. Good job today, everyone.